And happy Thanksgiving again, and welcome back to Who Would Win. This Who Would Win comes to us from Carter Presley. I had to remember the name. What's the question? Who would win a fight? The Cloverfield monster, or Clover as it's called, versus Godzilla. Now, to be fair, it's a little difficult to do this. Not because it's impossible to know what these guys are capable of and how they can match up in a fight, but more so because with Clover, the Cloverfield monster we see in Cloverfield is only an infant, and we do get a brief glimpse at the end of Cloverfield Paradox of what a full-grown one is quite possibly. And they are big. Apparently the official information on Clover is that just the Cloverfield monster baby is around 250 to 300 feet tall and about 1,200 feet long. Roughly around 5,000 tons. Now, there's no actual confirmed height on how big they actually can be. Again, the hint we get is the one that breaches that cloud cover. But something along those lines, probably a couple thousand feet tall at least. Probably weighing hundreds of tons. So if we go with that information, we can go with that information. But to be fair, I'll use both a theorized adult one and the one that we actually had the full information on with a baby. And an adult or a fledgling, a hatchling Clover, as it's called, is roughly 250 to 300 feet tall, about 1,200 feet long, weighing somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 feet. Now, it's extremely powerful, has extremely dense skin due to living under the ocean, deep in the ocean for so many years. And is extremely volatile because it's a newborn hatchling. It doesn't know what's going on, so it's kind of afraid and terrified, afraid and angry all at once. So it's capable of withstanding of conventional firearms. It even survived, at least it's alleged to have survived, basically a bomb, an atomic bomb dropping on it. It's how dense and powerful its skin is, and how strong it is just ripping through buildings. The adult Clover would, in theory, just be this powerful to the umpteenth degree. Godzilla. Now, when I'm using Godzilla, I use basically, so many different versions of Godzilla. There's also the comics Godzilla. I'll probably be including that in later videos, just to include it. So you have the Showa, and you have the it's the Showa and names. Not Heisei, because Heisei, there's the Heisei one as well, which I don't have right here, who was much stronger than the Showa era one. Both these guys can survive, the Showa and the Heisei are kind of comparable to each other. They're both very tall, though, quite frankly, not as tall as Clover, but close to it. Although you can make the argument they are taller depending on which version you're looking at, just based on the buildings. So, because they usually are much taller than the buildings they're around. Clover was not taller than the infant Clover was not taller than a lot of the buildings it was in. Godzilla is usually portrayed as being a lot taller than the building it's around. So he is probably taller than a juvenile Clover. Maybe not by a huge amount, but taller nonetheless. And almost certainly a lot heavier, definitely. Has all versions of Godzilla have a version of the atomic breath, which is a radiation breath that's concentrated and, used for attack. Godzilla is also portrayed as having natural magnetic properties, being struck by lightning and using that electricity to its advantage, creating an atomic pulse to blow enemies away. The red spiral death ray was introduced in the Heisei series, and that's, again, the Millennium Godzilla, but the Heisei series. So, it's... cracking my neck there. It's not there. We can't use the red spiral death ray for the Showa era. But still, Showa era is actually a capable fighter, including things like boxing and actually, sliding his tail for a drop kick. But he is capable of being defeated and has been defeated and killed several times. The Millennium series Godzilla is probably stronger than either of those versions of Godzilla, capable of going toe-to-toe with Kaiser Ghidorah, with all these individuals who were possibly world-ending, tanked a meteorite to the face. I believe Godzilla survived a black hole. I can't remember which one version of it was. I think it might have been the Millennium series. Either that or it was Heisei. but survived a black hole, survived a meteorite being basically tanked into his face, survived the absolute zero ray from Mechagodzilla, which is supposed to basically, stop all matter and basically just completely obliterate something in an instant. And Godzilla survived the point blank radius of this. Damaged, but came out alive, which means Millennia Series Godzilla's durability is off the charts. And is overall just extremely powerful and dangerous. Then there's Zilla. Most of us don't like to talk about Zilla, but always talk about Zilla Jr., who's far more powerful than his father. But Zilla is a different version of Godzilla, obviously from the 1998 version. A lot of fish. And he's not actually anywhere near as large as the other versions of Godzilla. He's pretty large, but he's not anywhere near as large. In fact, he's actually smaller than Clover is. And unlike the other ones who could kind of tank missiles a lot of times, Zilla cannot tank missiles. He actually is quite damaged by missile fire and by conventional weapons. Then we have the Monsterverse, the 2014 to 2019 King of the Monsters, and Godzilla vs. King Kong, legendary Godzilla, who is very durable, very tough, survived the oxygen destroyer in this universe, which killed the original Godzilla in the previous universe, and created Destroya in the Godzilla vs. Destroya. Granted, it nearly killed him, but he survived it. Has survived basically the blast radius of nuclear weapons before. Has his atomic breath, which is far more powerful once we get to King of the Monsters. He does have his burning form in that form, but there's a lot of stuff that burning form in that series, but there's a lot of stuff that kind of is a lead up to the burning form, so we can't really use that in this version of the fight. And he's ultimately just extremely durable, extremely tough, going toe-to-toe with one of the more powerful versions of Ghidorah we've seen, capable of taking on the Mutos himself. So he's a very bulk fighter. And then there's Godzilla Earth, who is arguably one of the strongest versions of Godzilla that exists. Godzilla Earth is about 1,000 feet tall, has a constant shield of radiation, like an electromagnetic shield around him. His atomic breath is essentially like a condensed laser beam that just cuts through mountainsides. It's no conventional weapon can hurt this guy. You need unconventional weapons, and the question is, would Clover have any of those? But let's break this down. So let's start with Baby Clover. Baby Clover versus Showa and Heisei era Godzilla. Who wins in that fight? Well, I gotta give that fight, honestly, to Godzilla. Because Clover, as far as we know, does not have experience fighting other kaiju giant monsters. Godzilla clearly does, because Clover does not have any sort of breath weaponry to him, or any sort of long-range weaponry. He's got the parasites, but they probably wouldn't be able to get through Godzilla's skin. And even if they did, Godzilla's so large that maybe he'd start popping like that, but it wouldn't kill him. It wouldn't cause his whole body to explode. So because of both their experiences and both their overall durabilities that are comparable to Clover, I would have to go with Showa era Godzilla. They'd have a pretty good duking out fight, because size-wise, they're pretty comparable to each other. Godzilla just has more experience fighting kaiju. Then we go into Millennia Series Godzilla, whose durability far exceeds both Heisei and Showa era's Godzilla. So right off the bat, Clover, and he's at least as tall, if not taller. If not, there's a Godzilla size chart that's really great to use. I think he is a little taller than the other series Godzillas. These guys would duke it out for a lot longer because Godzilla could take a lot more of a beating. But Godzilla, I think, ultimately would win again, probably point blank firing a blast down like Clover's throat like he did in 2014. Zilla, unfortunately, I think, does lose a fight against Clover. His durability is nowhere on the same level as the actual Godzilla's durabilities. And his breath weapon, while he's capable of using it, isn't as powerful as far as we've seen in the movie. Now, again, this is clear from a comic, so maybe in the comic it is demonstrated to be more powerful. And let's be clear, if you were to tell me that this was just a creature that isn't Godzilla, but maybe like a monster Godzilla fights, which it was, but at that point the damage was done to the reputation. If there's just some sort of other kaiju, this is a good design. Honestly, it's just kind of a different kaiju in the Godzilla universe. That'd be fine. Fortunately, you called it Godzilla, so we have a problem here. But look, Godzilla would try to put up a solid fight, but Zilla, unfortunately, is the weakest among this crowd. He has nothing really to hurt Clover. Clover also is actually larger than Godzilla. He's over 1,200 feet long. So Clover does have an overall size advantage over any of the Godzillas, save for Godzilla Earth. But in terms of his size, like height advantage, most of the Godzillas are taller than he is, and therefore have a better, grasp of things. Because Godzilla's fought bigger enemies than him before all the time. So unfortunately, Zilla would probably lose that fight. Godzilla 2014 or King of the Monsters Godzilla, as we're looking at. This is an interesting one because that Godzilla is almost 400 feet tall. So he's larger than even the largest confirmed estimate for Baby Clover. He is larger than Baby Clover. He's probably also outweighs Baby Clover by quite a bit. He's probably actually got about 100 because you can tell because Clover is very lanky and skinny. Godzilla, you can tell he's got heft. He's thick. So these two together, clearly Godzilla's going to have the power advantage over Clover. And even, if the parasites try to get on Godzilla, you can tell. Those are, by the way, that's not scales on Godzilla. I mean, some of them might be, but those are all I think they're called dermal scar. It's dermal scarring from atomic blasting. That's all scar tissue. And they're thick as hell. Again, he survived the oxygen destroyer. He can survive nuclear blast like Clover can. I think that fight ultimately, it's going to be a knocked out, dragged down fight, but I think that fight ends similar to the way the Muto fight did, because the Mutos do have a similar design to Clover. And honestly, I think the female Muto was of a comparable size, at least height-wise, to Clover, if not a little taller. It ends with Godzilla blasting the nuclear blast down her throat, or down Clover's throat. And then we get into Godzilla Earth, who's completely, again, let's use a size comparison with my head. There's Godzilla Earth. There's some buildings might come up to there. That's where Clover kind of stands in comparison to Clover or the Godzilla Earth. He just got a step on Clover and Clover's done. Now we address the adult Clover, which estimate that thing probably a couple thousand feet tall. Then you have a problem on Godzilla's part because most of those Godzilla are just going to be chump food to him. He's going to just both those guys. Millennium Godzilla is an interesting, because Millennium Godzilla might get swallowed whole by Clover, but he could probably survive that. So the question then becomes, Godzilla's stuck in the stomach of a beast. He probably just blasts his way out of there, because we don't know how durable the inside of Clover is as an adult or as a child. So he probably blows his way out of that. So ultimately, I actually got to give that to Millennium Godzilla, because he would probably survive the consumption, because if Clover doesn't swallow him whole, he's going to just kind of try to chew him up. But Godzilla's durability is such that he'd probably survive that and probably blast his face open and probably take him down. So I actually got to give that to Millennium Godzilla. Zilla's screwed. There's little to say. He'd be a snack. Oh, God. King of the Monsters Godzilla is actually much larger than most of the other versions of Godzilla. So like with Millennium Godzilla, Clover might actually have some trouble eating King of the Monster Godzilla. Unfortunately, I don't think his durability is quite on the same level as Millennium Godzilla's is, because we haven't seen him tank as many feats. I mean, granted, he survived a re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, but that's not really much compared to a meteor tanking a meteor to the face. So, see, that's a tough one. I think, unfortunately, he's not that fast compared to something like Clover, and Clover could just probably scoop him up and just start to try to chew on him. He'd probably last a little while and probably blast him in the face, but I do think King of the Monsters Godzilla actually loses the fight. And then it's the big daddy here. And again, I know there's Godzilla, the comic Godzilla who went to hell, but Godzilla Earth versus an adult Clover. Now, adult Clover is probably actually far exceeds even Godzilla Earth's height. Like, Godzilla Earth, from what we can tell, is probably a third or a quarter the height of an adult Clover, ultimately. But where Godzilla Earth makes up for that is, again, he has that standard force field he always has on him. And just in terms of sheer abilities and overall power, including his atomic breath, he just mowed down adult Clover. He just, like a condensed laser of a radiation, just cuts him down and then just slices him up and kills him. So ultimately, that one's got to go to Godzilla Earth. So who ultimately wins these fights? In the long term, I do think it is the King of the Monsters. I think it is Godzilla. Now, that's not to say Clover and adult Clover don't win a couple fights. I think they do. I think adult Clover actually beats out 3 of the versions of Godzilla, actually 4 of them. but does not win surprisingly against Millennium Godzilla and Earth Godzilla. And then Clover really only wins against normal Zilla, or wins against Zilla himself. So, Baby Clover. So I ultimately have to give it to Godzilla just because of the majority of fights he would win. And if we use the comic Godzilla, I have a feeling comic Godzilla would also beat Clover as well, because that Godzilla I know has gone to hell, come back, fought Zeus. So yeah, he's pretty hacked actually. But ultimately, yeah, I got to go with Godzilla in this fight. What do you think? Think it's Godzilla, or do you think it's the OG Clover? Actually, let's be honest. The original OG is the big G himself. But you know, the little baby Clover here, or a big adult Clover. Take your pick. Until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Again, I think it's Godzilla the majority, but what do you think? I got still a what if to do. I don't know if I have enough time to do it right now. I'll do it when I get home because I'm going to go see Knives Out, and I should still have time to do the what if when I get home. So well, maybe that's what I'll do because we're about to have dinner. I got about a half hour. I could theoretically do it in the time, but I don't want to rush it out. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Later, folks.